Maybe the odd one for northern England. But for much of England and Wales, Thursday's another dry day, and certainly in the south, plenty more sunshine. Temperatures up to warm category, I think you described them as, but just not as hot as recent days. However, as we go towards the weekend, and particularly into Sunday and Monday, temperatures could rise and rise beyond what we saw earlier this week. Extreme heat is possible. The Met Office have an amber extreme heat warning in place for Sunday and Monday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there. Well, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's me again, Patrick Christie's here, in for the big man himself, Nigel Farage. I'm with you all the way through until 8 p.m. And tonight's show is an absolute blockbuster. I've been out and I've done, well, frankly, a bit of proper journalism, actually, unlike the people that you'll get, of course, at the BBC. We've blown the case wide open at a migrant hotel in Essex. You're going to be shocked by the sheer level of incompetency that's taking place at this place. Elderly people are now scared in their own homes. We've got people in public service jobs who are being turfed out and made homeless. They can't see their kids. And guess what? The real kicker is, ladies and gentlemen, this hotel has got a public footpath that leads directly to a nursery school right in the middle of town. You could not make it up. Also, I'm currently in possession here, right here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at it, of the Telford grooming gang report. Shocking stuff, yet again. Police too afraid of being called racist to actually act. For more than 30 years, hundreds, if not thousands, of vulnerable working-class young white girls were systematically abused on an industrial scale by predominantly men of Pakistani heritage. When will this end? Also, what's that? Yeah, I think that's the sound of a bit of breaking news as well. We've got the latest on the Tory leadership election race as well. But first, it's time for your latest headlines. Don't go anywhere.
Patrick, thank you. Well, that breaking news that Patrick was referring to, 8 candidates now have secured enough nominations to enter the race to replace Boris Johnson as Conservative Party leader and ultimately Prime Minister. So they are Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Tom Tugendhat, Penny Mordaunt, Kemi Badenoch, Nadeem Zahawi, Jeremy Hunt and Suella Braverman, all going to the first ballot tomorrow. Former Health Secretary Sajid Javid pulled out of the contest just minutes before the announcement, saying he looked forward to seeing the debate unfold. And backbencher Raymond Christie also stepped aside after failing to secure a single public supporter. So Graham Brady explained the next stage of the contest will take place in less than 24 hours.
Those 8 will go to the first round
ballot tomorrow between 1:30 and 3:30 with the result announced as soon as we can after that.
And the government said it will allow a debate on Labour's proposed no confidence vote if the motion is amended to remove any reference to the Prime Minister. That comes after Labour's initial motion for a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister was denied. The Labour Party has accused the government of running scared and called on the Tory leadership candidates to denounce the decision. A government spokesperson said a vote on the Prime Minister would be a waste of parliamentary time as he's already resigned. Well, also in the news today, an inquiry's concluded that more than 1,000 children were sexually exploited over at least 30 years in Telford in Shropshire. The report calls the police and council failings shocking. It also says unnecessary suffering and even deaths may have been avoided if West Mercia Police had acted on reports. Telford and Wrekin Council issued a statement saying that it apologised wholeheartedly to the victims, while West Mercia Police admitted their actions fell far short of the protection the public should have had. NASA has unveiled the first pictures taken by its new James Webb Telescope. The $9 billion machine is expected to revolutionise astronomy by allowing scientists to peer farther into the universe than ever before, while providing much greater detail and clarity. NASA says its high-resolution pictures will allow scientists to observe the evolution of galaxies and even the life cycles of stars. The Queen has said the COVID-19 vaccine rollout was amazing, as she recognised the achievements of UK medical staff by awarding the George Cross Medal to the NHS. In a ceremony at Windsor Castle, the monarch and Prince Charles welcomed NHS bosses and a frontline worker from each of the 4 UK nations. The award recognises acts of great heroism and courage in the face of extreme danger. And some breaking news to bring you within the last few minutes. We're hearing 70 firefighters are currently tackling a blaze at a pub in Trafalgar Square in central London. London Fire Brigade have said half of the pub's basement seemed to be alight. We're looking at photographs posted on social media. They're showing huge plumes of smoke billowing from the building, and people are being warned to avoid the area. Full detail on that in our next bulletin. You're up to date for now on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. This is GB News, where now it's time for Farage with Patrick.
Well, a very good evening, everybody. Now, as we've just heard, breaking news in the last hour, and 8 MPs have crossed the support threshold to face the first vote tomorrow in the race to be our next Prime Minister. So here they are. We've got former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, International Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt, Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee Tom Tugendhat, of course. Liz Truss is there, Foreign Secretary. Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi, former Equalities Minister Kemi Badenoch, Health Committee Chair Jeremy Hunt, and Attorney General Suella Braverman. Blinking, you'll miss it there with that graphic, eh? There we are. But Darren McCaffrey, GB News, his political editor, is in Westminster for us now. Darren, thank you very much for joining us. Well, yet another busy day. One of many busy days to come, one would imagine. What's the latest, please?
Yeah, certainly a busy day, and as you say, this is far from the end of it. In fact, we're only really starting to embark on the beginning of the selection process to whittle down those 8 candidates down to 2 and then ultimately to 1 by the end of the summer to decide who will become the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister. The 8 of them are currently in the building behind me, the Palace of Westminster, in which they are meeting the whole of the Conservative Party through a series of hustings to try and convince those, must be said, about 100 Conservative MPs who thus far seem pretty unconvinced about who to back in this leadership race. MPs, it must be said, like Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, and Sajid Javid, who until an hour ago was a candidate but have yet to declare who they are backing. The next stage, Patrick, is tomorrow between 1:30 and 3:30, in which MPs will vote in that first round of the ballot. They need to get at least 30 MPs to back them in order to move into the second round, and that means that some names could drop out who frankly have scraped to get through into the first round. People like Jeremy Hunt, maybe Nadine Zahawi, the current Chancellor, Suella Braverman, the Attorney General. It'll be fascinating to see how well they do tomorrow, and indeed if they don't do well, where the supporters may well end up supporting the other candidates in all of this. So it is still a very unpredictable process, and one that's going to play out not just this week but well into next week, I suspect, given the fact that there are still 8 candidates vying for that top job.
Thank you very, very much from the epicentre of power there, and what is a fascinating Tory leadership contest, or Tory talent show, as indeed some people have been calling it. Darren McCaffrey there, GB News' political editor from Westminster. Well, joining me now to help cut through some more of this noise, he's live in the studio, and it's the very experienced political commentator and indeed podcaster. It's Mike Indian, who I've interviewed at least 25 times, but never met in person yet. So there we go. You are real. You're also a lot taller than I would have thought you were.
And you're better dressed than I have seen in person as well.
OK, right, OK. Well, look, so the runners and riders are now properly in. Who's your money on?
Well, I've got a few bets in. I think the outside bet would be Kemi Badenoch. She's come up a phenomenal surge, Patrick, through the weekend. The poll yesterday for Conservative and put her in second place among the members. Penny Mordaunt is another strong bet as well. I think this media stuff, though, the fact that the press they're gravitating around Rishi Sunak, looking at the number of endorsements, I think they're mistakenly seeing him as the comfort blanket candidate.
Why mistakenly?
Because Rishi is trying to position himself very much as the man of the people, but anyone who was on Twitter at the weekend would have seen that clip doing the rounds from the early 2000s where he claimed to have some friends who were working class, well, not quite working class as well. Yeah. The Chancellor is trying to position himself as, or the former Chancellor, I should say, is trying to position himself as a man of economic competence and reality, but he's also encumbered by the legacy of the pandemic. Yes, that COVID fine as well, but also the fact that he's the only candidate not promising upfront tax cuts. And although that might play well in the wider country, it doesn't necessarily ring true in the ears of his Conservative colleagues.
Absolutely. And my concern when it comes to Conservative Party is that potentially, and I really hope they don't do this, because they'll be hiding to nothing, but it's to ignore that red wall again, ignore everything up north. And I'm not convinced that Rishi Sunak, maybe unfairly because of how much he's got in his personal bank account, maybe unfairly, but just him as a person, I don't think he goes down well up north.
There is polling to support this. Opinion have been up and done polling in the Red Wall seats, and they actually found of all the leadership contenders, Rishi Sunak was the one who would fare the worst in those key Tory marginals needed to keep that majority that Boris Johnson won in 2019.
Well, that should be game over in a way for him, really, because you do need to win that red wall.
Well, this is the trouble with the Tory leadership election. Yes, you've got to admire the sort of ruthless efficiency with which they can hold a contest, 6 days after the Prime Minister's tendered his resignation as Tory party leader. However, we've got to remember that the constituencies of the Parliamentary Party, the Tory membership and the wider country are all very different. And finding a candidate who can appeal to all of those in the same way that Boris Johnson did is going to be very, very difficult indeed, Patrick.
It is, absolutely, and it remains to be seen whether or not the Conservative Party have committed a kind of great national act of mass suicide politically here, although we'll have to wait and see. Just some of the outsiders, I suppose, as it were, Nadine Zahawi, for example, Jeremy Hunt, Suella Braverman. Is there any point in them even running?
I would say Jeremy Hunt will probably fare less well than he did last time. I would expect him to drop out quite quickly. He was giving an interview on LBC, actually. Sorry to name it a station, but he was looking at his own chances. I suspect
terrible interview, by the way. It was a terrible.
I think his ship has probably sailed. The stable door is open. The horse is bolted for him. Suella Braverman is fighting, I think, to maintain relevance. Don't forget that the more interesting races today was the fact that she squeezed Priti Patel out of the race because the ERG are trying to row in behind a single candidate of the right. It might be Liz Truss, it might be Suella Braverman as well. Nadine Zahawi, however, Conservative Home's Paul Goodman gives him a good chance if he can get over these questions around his finances as well. But he's already promised a lot of unfunded tax cuts, and for the man who'd had to deliver those if he was kept in the Treasury by anyone who won the contest or as Prime Minister, he's pledged tens of billions of pounds and hasn't said how he'd pay for those yet. That's a very tricky thing to do. Mike,
thank you very much. Pleasure to meet you in person as well, my good man. It's been a long time coming. Mike Indian there, of course, political commentator and podcaster. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? But I tell you what, we've hardly got time to come up for air because I'm in possession of the Telford grooming gang report here, ladies and gentlemen. And also, I've got a massive exclusive coming your way very shortly. We've got our priorities all wrong in this country. Today I went to visit Wickford in Essex, which is set to be the latest in a long line of towns to have an asylum seeker hotel. But nothing sums up the total lunacy of this government's approach to asylum seekers than what I witnessed today. This particular hotel is on a road populated by mostly elderly people in their retirement. They have worked their entire lives and paid their taxes. They've saved up so that they can spend their final years in peace and quiet in what is a lovely part of the world. And then one day, boom, without any warning whatsoever, they're told that 100 asylum seekers are moving in next door. Now, by definition, we don't know who all these people are. We don't know anything about them. And yet we'll plant 100 of them in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do all day, almost no security whatsoever, in a hotel that has a public footpath leading directly to a nursery school. And then, on top of that, there were people who use that hotel as their long-term place of residence, people who block book it out for months at a time, people who use it so that they can technically have an address so that they can see their children at the weekends. And they've been turfed out now just to make way for these people. Just have a look now at the devastating impact that this has had on one man who is trained to be a firefighter, so basically a public servant, a man willing to risk his life for people like you and I in times of absolute crisis. He will now no longer be able to see his children because of a result of him being made homeless for these people. Check this out.
I got a knock on the door Wednesday last week telling me that I've got to leave the hotel after 2 years of paying my rent. Because asylum seekers are taking the hotel.
In a nutshell, as a result of this hotel, supposedly anyway, about to accommodate asylum seekers, they've now made British citizens homeless and unable to see their kids.
But they've made them intentionally homeless because they've made us sign letters saying that we have voluntarily left the hotel. As a result of this, I could break down crying now, bruv. Ruins me. Stress me out to the max.
But it's not just the fact that it's happening, is it? It's the fact that it's all being done in secret. It's all cloak and dagger. It's all clandestine. It's all wrong. It's almost like they have something to hide, isn't it? Nobody will ever be able to convince me that a full-blown British citizen who has worked and paid into the system his or her whole life should be turfed out so that we can make way for what some people would regard as illegal immigrants, so that the taxpayer can put them into a semi-luxury hotel with 3 square meals a day. Now, I'm all for tolerance and inclusivity, but why should elderly residents be made to have to update the security at their homes in their dotage, to have to pick their granddaughters up from the station because they don't think it's safe for them to walk home anymore? Why should people doing a public service job be made homeless to accommodate these other people? And then, of course, we've got the bleeding heart Liberals, haven't we, saying to us that we need more help. We need to do more to help. Well, from where I'm sitting, we're doing quite enough already. Well, there we go. That's my views, of course, but I want to hear from you. You can get in touch, Farage at gbnews.uk. But I'm asking you, my audience question, do we have our priorities all wrong in this country? Get in touch, email, that email again, Farage at gbnews.uk, or tweet us using the hashtag Farage on GB News. And I asked one resident, OK, about the safety of his granddaughters. I went over there today, OK, to Wickford in Essex. We got a tip-off, and one of our producers here, George Ivo, did a tremendous job managing to investigate all of this, putting it all together for us, getting in touch with people. And here's what one chap had to say about, well, basically, sort of the fears for the safety of his loved ones in the area.
They wouldn't. We wouldn't allow it. Their husbands or boyfriends or their grandparents, we wouldn't allow it. If they got to the main railway station, if they was London and got to Wickford station, they will be picked up by us. There's no way they'll walk past there. It's far too dangerous.
Yeah, that's David there, of course. But I also asked David about the local area and basically how safe he thought it was going to be going forward for locals.
Just up there, there's a nursery school, and there's a direct footpath from the Chichester Hotel, goes through that field,
straight to a nursery school?
Back to the nursery.
Straight to a nursery school?
Straight outside the nursery gate.
Goodness me.
And there's 100 children in there.
Gosh.
Of all age from 6 months old to whatever, 5 or 6 years old. I feel that completely let down by all the authorities, yeah. And I wasn't very happy with the reply I got from the Home Office either.
Do you think you should be allowed to vote on this? Do you think local people should be allowed to vote on whether or not they want a migrant hotel?
Yes, I do. And I've called a meeting this Wednesday, coming, the 13th, in the village hall. And so far, there's about 200 people turning up. We can't accommodate the amount of people that's going to turn up. So you can see the response. And people can say that it's racist. It's not racist.
No, it's not racist, is it? It's about a matter of principle, basic safety and, frankly, common sense. But as I was chatting to David there, and thank you very much, David, I'm sure you are watching now. It was great to meet you and your lovely wife as well earlier on today. But somebody else got in touch, actually. They could see that we were doing an interview. That's what happens when you drive around in a big branded GB News car. But they basically said, oh, look, my partner would like to talk to you. He's at work at the minute. He lives somewhere on that road anyway. And here's his number. Can you give him a bell? And so I did speak to this particular chap. He wished to remain anonymous. That's fair enough. He slammed the authorities for the lack of notice given.
It's very distressing that nobody is informing us about anything that's going on that could jeopardise the safety of the community.
Yeah, and I suppose there's an issue about what these people do all day as well, because there's not a lot to do around here, is there?
Well, no. I mean, if they're hanging around your properties, eyeing it up, I don't know what's going to happen. My other half, she likes gardening. She's going to feel very intimidated not to go out in the front garden, and she might not be safe in this time there to be sitting in the back garden. That's another concern with the neighbours as well. He said exactly the same thing.
So, really, this is just going to change your way of life?
Oh, yeah, it would be just constant stress and worry, because I'm at work, my partner, the wife works at home and alone, there could be a serious problem. I can't get home quick enough.
I can't get home quick enough. Just bear that in mind. Now, it's important to say that we're not trying to make out here that there's this picture of that every single asylum seeker is some kind of threat, or every single person who's going to be in one of these hotels poses some kind of threat to wider society. It's the fact that we just don't know in a lot of cases, isn't it? And it's a matter of principle, and it's the secrecy of it as well. But I spoke to one of the residents who was actually evicted from this hotel. Now, he was on a long stay, OK? So he was basically there, he'd work there and get to see his kids at the weekends because that gave him technically an address, right? OK? So he does suffer from mental health issues. We have chosen to hide his identity, but I just want to warn you, ladies and gentlemen, this is moving stuff. Here's what he had to say after being evicted.
I got a knock on the door Wednesday last week telling me that I've got to leave the hotel after 2 years of paying my rent. Because asylum seekers are taking the hotel. The Home Office have got a scheme going on. We all thought it was scaremongering, and then Saturday morning I got a knock at the door, have to move my clothes and move everything, so I moved everything to a staff room. They needed 32 rooms and there was 36, so they saved 4 for staff. They gave me a room, and then the owner of the hotel, the owner of the hotel, the leaseholder, he comes and calls a meeting for all the long-term stays. He said that he didn't know about the long-term stays, that our tenancies are invalid, and he wants us out. I had to go to a B&B out of my comfort zone, away from my work environment, so I'm having to spend extra money. And now I can't see my children because the B&B don't allow children.
In a nutshell, as a result of this hotel, supposedly anyway, about to accommodate asylum seekers, they've now made British citizens homeless and unable to see their kids.
But they've made them intentionally homeless because they've made us sign letters saying that we have voluntarily left the hotel.
Is your mental health all right now? Has it been made worse?
Mate, I've got PTSD, body dysmorphia, anxiety and depression and borderline personality disorder. It's ruined me. If you look at my face now, I've got bruises all over my face where I've self-harmed myself last week, punched myself 50 times in the face.
As a result of this?
As a result of this, I could break down crying now, bruv. Ruins me. Stress me out to the max.
All right, mate. Yeah? All right, well, look, let's leave it there, yeah? All right. Are you OK?
No. It's just stressful. It's just out of order.
Yeah, it was very difficult, that. Of course, it's much more difficult for that particular chap, and it just doesn't really make any sense to me. And so I decided that, OK, well, enough's enough of this now. There's only one thing for it. We have to actually go into this hotel and demand some answers. So here's what's happened. Well, look, the people here clearly want answers. I think we all want answers. There's a chance that this kind of thing is happening up and down the country. So let's go and try and speak to the management and see if we can get some of those answers. Doesn't appear to be too much security so far, which is potentially quite concerning. Oh, hello there. Is it possible to speak to the management at all?
Do you want to come in?
Yeah, is that all right? Oh, thank you. Lovely. Cheers. Thank you so much. Gosh. Yeah. Oh, hello, mate. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can leave. I'll ring the police.
Is it possible to have a quick chat with you about what's happening at the hotel? It's just.
Please.
We just want to give you a right of reply on some quite serious allegations. So it's just, we've been told that potentially some people have been made homeless to accommodate the asylum seekers, and we just wondered if you would like to comment on that. Yeah, can you just tell us what you're going to do to make sure the place stays secure? Because there's a direct footpath to a nursery school there, and just wanted to make sure that none of the asylum seekers were going to be able to do anything about that now.
Can you leave the building, please?
You're
actually, like, illegally entering the building.
It's just a massive public interest, is the thing.
But it's not, because it's actually been shut down, so...
Has the Home Office paid you a lot of money? Can you leave? That's fine. That's all right, mate. No, we've just got to give you the right to reply to some serious allegations. That's all.
Guys, could you please leave?
Are you going to consult any of the residents about this?
Can you leave, please?
Okay. All right. Fine.
Leave, please?
Fair enough. Cheers, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Cheers, mate. Take care. We won't put you in, mate. Right, well, there we go. Obviously, a bit of a no-comment interview there, but that's, to be honest with you, what we're expecting. We're quite surprised to get in, actually, but there we go. We reached out to the Home Office, who gave the following reply. So this is from the Home Office, OK? So they said this. This is exclusively to us, by the way. The use of hotels to house asylum seekers is unacceptable, and we are working with local authorities to find appropriate long-term accommodation across the United Kingdom. Decisions on members of the public who are temporarily residing at hotels are a matter for the hoteliers, and the Home Office instructs providers to carry out thorough diligence checks before any site is used. Well, there we go. I mean, to be honest with you, that site was pretty shoddy, so I'd be amazed if that passed any diligence checks. But we also wanted to contact the MP for Rayleigh and Wickford, Mark Francois, and unfortunately wasn't able to appear on the show this evening. He was a busy man, that's fair enough, but he did give us very kindly this particular statement. He said, the hotel was previously used to temporarily house homeless people during the COVID pandemic, but this is somewhat different. As I understand it, no plans have yet been put into operation, but I will be contacting the Home Office, the local council, and of course the hotel owners tomorrow to understand exactly what is being proposed and when. In the longer term, he continued, we need to stand up to interfering European human rights judges so that flights to Rwanda can commence, meaning this accommodation will no longer be required. Now, it's worth noting that we had also reached out to the local council and the hotel themselves, but both have decided not to reply. Well, there we go. Make of that what you will, ladies and gentlemen. Just again, we are asking you can get in touch, farage@gbnews.uk. You can tweet us, of course, at GB News. We're asking you whether or not you think we've got our priorities all wrong. If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, you're just tuning in, that was quite a big exclusive here, right here for GB News that we put together earlier today. Worth noting again, and the tremendous work of one of our producers here, George Ivell, who really looked into all of that for us and got the logistics all sorted. But yes, if you are just joining us, basically it's another asylum seeker hotel, but this time it's basically in an elderly community with a direct footpath that leads straight to a nursery and, frankly, loads of other issues as well. How do we know who these people are? How do we know what they want? There we go. But coming up, ladies and gentlemen, it's another absolute shocker, let me tell you. This, of course, it's the report that I'm holding in my hand right now, and it's the report into the Telford grooming gang scandal. Quite possibly one of the UK's largest ever grooming gang scandals. And yep, you heard it, there we go. Children were treated as prostitutes. They prevented the police from getting involved. I tell you what, while they're afraid of being racist, there's young, vulnerable, working-class white girls being abused on an industrial scale right across the UK. But all of that's coming your way very, very shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We are one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hey, this is Mark Stein on tonight's Mark Stein Show on GB News. We are live in beautiful Enniskillen in County Fermanagh for Orangeman's Day. We have Kate Hoey, we have Arlene Foster, a packed show. It all starts on GB News at 8 o'clock. See you then.
Yeah, you don't want to miss that. It's all happening this evening on GB News, ladies and gentlemen. Now, loads of feedback coming in, actually. In fact, during the break there, my phone was blowing up from people, various contacts as well, indeed friends who are watching this particular show, about the exclusive report that we did into an asylum seeker hotel in Wickford in Essex. And I'm asking the question to you this evening. Do you think that we've got our priorities all wrong as a country? Stuart's been in touch. He says, yes, very wrong. Another viewer as well has said it's diabolical. It's a diabolical liberty that £4.7 million per day of British taxpayer money is used to keep asylum seekers in hotels. It's time to stop all immigration and use the money to help our own people. Very much a kind of charity starts at home tweet there, and I'm inclined to agree with you. But anyway, Dot's been on. Dot says, enough of this outrageous tolerance of anyone and everyone just walking into our country who expect us to support and pay for them. And it's a really interesting one, this, Dot, isn't it? Because I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, really. It's all very well and good if there's tolerance and inclusivity. Of course there is. And we do have a duty. As human beings, we do naturally have a duty to one another. No one can dispute that. That's fair enough. But at what point does it become taking the mick, right? At what point does it become a little bit too much? Because we're now slapping people. If indeed this hotel does become a migrant hotel, then we're slapping people in the middle of nowhere with nothing to do all day, no way possibly of getting a job or busying themselves or anything like that, desecrating a local community essentially as well, and actually making people homeless, making British taxpayers and public servants homeless. Well, that can't be right, can it? Maria says the hotels ought to house our homeless. Janet says it is disgusting what is being allowed to happen in this country. Gosh, there's some consensus there. But we're moving on now, ladies and gentlemen, because this is yet another massive story. I tell you what, it really, really is. More than 1,000 girls have been abused in sex crimes that have lasted generations in Telford. A new inquiry into the grooming gangs there has revealed. Released today, in fact, I've got the kind of blow-by-blow account of it here in front of me. Released today, the findings show that the abuse in the area spans decades, with children being blamed for the exploitation that they actually suffered themselves. Many of them were groomed by older boys and men, some of them believing that they were actually in a relationship with their perpetrator before being sucked into a horrific cycle of abuse. But there was nowhere to turn, as the girls were regarded by many as child prostitutes. Well, how can that be a thing? If you're a child, you can't be a prostitute, can you? There we go. In one case, a witness said that after she fell pregnant, she was excluded from school and told by a teacher to, quote, stop sleeping with these boys or she would never make anything of herself. Right. as well as highlighting failures from the authorities and agencies in the area, including West Mercia Police and Telford and Wrekin Council. The report also says, here we go, it's the kicker, drum roll please, there was a background of nervousness around race in Telford, and that this nervousness led to a reluctance to act. So reading between the lines there, the council and the police and whoever else were potentially too afraid of being considered racist to actually stop the industrial gang rape of vulnerable young working class white girls. More than 170 witnesses came forward to give evidence to the report, which has made 47 recommendations to the agencies. But joining me now to talk about this is David Greenwood, a solicitor who represented survivors of the Rotherham abuse case. David, thank you very much. Have you got déjà vu reading this report?
Absolutely. It's got all the hallmarks of everything that we went through in Rotherham. Absolutely. Everything is there. Failures by the council, failures by the police, and the failure by them to act swiftly enough. And of course, there's this race issue also.
And so no lessons have been learned as far as you're concerned. Let's just get stuck into a couple of different elements of it here. How can a child be considered a prostitute? Surely that's still illegal. I don't understand how that could be an excuse for the police to say they didn't want to look into it because it would seem to be child prostitution.
Well, we have to remember that this report covered almost 3 decades of abuse in Telford. So it may be that it's looking back at attitudes that were happening in the 90s and 2000s when, I mean, even then, to call a child a prostitute is absolutely wrong. It's just impossible, and it shows a complete lack of understanding of the crimes that were being committed here.
Reading here now, and I think this is an important one for a lot of our viewers as well, our listeners on radio or online viewers. I'm just quoting now. A great deal of evidence that there was a nervousness about race in Telford and Wellington in particular, bordering on a reluctance to investigate crimes committed by what was described as, quotes, the Asian community. I mean, how does that make you feel? Because it would appear then to someone, an outsider like me, that maybe the police prioritise being considered not racist as opposed to actually doing their job.
It's a curious one, isn't it? The police officers that I've ever met looking at crimes see them just as crimes. For the issue of race and not offending the Asian community in that area coming into the mix is really curious. I know that from experience in Rotherham, it was said that the council leaders didn't want to put too much effort into prosecuting the individuals because the Labour control council there relied on the Asian community for its vote. So that was the dynamic that was happening there. I'm not sure what... I haven't read the full report, so I'm not sure whether that's an issue in Telford or whether it was sheer political correctness gone mad with the council and officers. But my experience is that police officers just like to prosecute crimes. And if they see it, they should be prosecuting it.
One more very quick one here, David. Sorry to rush you, but we are a bit pressed for time. I've got a lot to race through, as I'm sure you can imagine. But you, of course, are a solicitor. You are someone who's got direct experience in representing victims of grooming gangs, child sexual exploitation. In your opinion, do they ever really get justice? Because from where I'm sitting, the sentences seem far too small and things like deportations never seem to happen.
Well, there's a modicum of justice coming through the criminal courts, in fact. There are a few notable judges up in Sheffield who have been helping to prosecute the perpetrators. There are a few in Leeds and Bradford also who are running the trials. And a lot of these perpetrators are being convicted. So that's the criminal side of things. But if you look at, bringing council officials and even the police to some kind of accountability, it just isn't happening. There has been no one sacked from the police as a result of their failures, their catastrophic and negligent failures in Rotherham. No one has been sacked from the council. The accountability just isn't happening at the moment. I'm helping with trying to change the Police Reform Act to allow officers to be prosecuted or brought to justice for gross negligence in this area. The thing is, the police conduct rules at the moment allow police to get away with this, and it's sending the wrong signal to the police. It's sending the signal that it's okay to do a bad job.
David, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show, and I'm sure people are very grateful for the work that you're doing trying to get justice for the victims of what is arguably some of the most horrific crimes that can possibly be imagined. David Greenwood there, a solicitor who represented survivors of the Rotherham abuse case. Of course, this is in relation today to the report that I'm holding right here on the Telford grooming gang scandal. We have to obviously get a right of reply from West Mercia Police, and they have said that they've apologised to children who were sexually exploited in Telford over the past 30 years, saying their actions fell far short of the help and protection that you should have had from us. Well, I mean, I think that's probably the understatement of the year, isn't it? There were deaths, there were forced abortions, there were people threatening with their houses being burnt down, there were lives ruined, and sorry, your efforts fell a bit short. Did they? Yeah, OK. In a statement, Telford and Wrekin Council said, we apologise wholeheartedly to victims and survivors for the pain that they have gone through, and we thank them for sharing their experiences. Frankly, I find that absolutely sickening. We thank them for sharing their experiences. They've been trying to share their experiences with you for the last 30 years. But you buried your heads in the sand, you put your fingers in your ears, you pretended that there wasn't a massive problem with Asian grooming gangs, and lo and behold, a load of people have essentially died or had their lives ruined. It's shocking. It's not good enough. But anyway, we'll move on from that now before I think my head explodes. But Twitter has slammed Elon Musk for attempting to ditch his $44 billion takeover deal, saying that his justifications are, quote, invalid and wrongful. Billionaire Musk has said that he wants to terminate the deal, which he struck in April, over the massive number of bot accounts that he says the social media giant has. Musk will have to fork over $1 billion if the deal falls through, but experts say that the mogul will likely enjoy a $400 million discount if he writes it off as a tax loss. I mean, this guy. Here to give us more on this story is the CEO of Getter and former advisor to Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. It's Jason Miller. Jason, how are you, my good man?
Patrick, good evening. Good to be with you.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, well, run us through this. Well, I mean, what do you think? Does this just go to expose that Twitter is dying?
Well, here's the thing. Everyone's talking about Musk versus Twitter, and you have the big titans going head-to-head in the legal sense. Will Musk have to pay $1 billion, or will they have to buy it for some $44 billion? Here's the thing. They're really fighting over a pile of rubble at this point. Twitter's reputation is so irreversibly damaged, whether it be the bots, whether it be the political censorship, whether it be the fact that they don't have a real business plan. Musk said that they're going to have to quadruple the number of daily active users to make any real money on this. I mean, what's even left to fight for of Twitter?
Yeah, well, just talk to me a bit about what a bot is. What does it do?
So a bot is essentially a fake account. And sometimes they're latent bots. They're just there. Sometimes they're more active. They might be trying to infect the rest of the system, or maybe they're trying to post information. A lot of times we've seen it where you might have foreign actors come in and try to push different things. Here's the thing. If anyone who spent more than 30 seconds on Twitter, you know that number is bigger than 5%. I'm really surprised that Twitter's out there saying it, that it's that low. But here's the other thing. You would think that Elon Musk, the world's richest man, would have done some of the due diligence before he said he was going to go spend billions of dollars to see how many bots there were.
Yeah, to be fair, it is a bit of a mess, isn't it, really, what's been going on with Twitter. But just talk to me a little bit about Getter, because I know a lot of people that are on there. Why is it different? What's the kind of USP, as it were, as opposed to Twitter?
Absolutely. Well, with Getter, it's a free speech platform that users are all treated the same. So you're never discriminated against. You're never shadow banned or algorithmed just because of your political opinion. You can be from the left, from the right, or not care about politics at all. What people want is to know they can speak their mind politically, and no one's going to come in and say, well, hold on, you only get free speech if we agree with you. Yeah. That's really the premise, the underpinning of why we launched Getter. I think that's why we're already up to 6 million people in just over a year.
Yeah, I mean, this idea of the shadow banning and the algorithms and, having to conform to one school of thought and we can't offend people, but if you're offended by something, then actually you just have to suck it up because you're offended by the wrong thing. And it's madness. So, yes, it does sound like a very interesting platform indeed. Of course, thank you so much for joining us as well. Great to have you back on the show. We'll have to talk again soon. The CEO of Getter and former advisor to President Donald Trump. That was, of course, Jason Miller. But up next, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Talking Pints, and I will be joined by Coronation star Shaun Ward. That's right, he's only off of Corrie. Stay tuned.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there. Welcome back, everybody. Now, joining me on Talking Pikes is Shaun Ward, who starred, of course, in Coronation Street as Callum Logan. And, of course, fingers in military drama Our Girl. Shaun, welcome to Talking Pikes. Cheers, my good man. How are you?
On, Shaun.
Good to see you. Good to see you. We're having a little chat off air, actually. We actually are from basically the same place.
Yeah, Manny, up north.
Up north.
South Manchester.
Gatley, you grew up in, and
Yeah.
I would say I used to play for Cheadle Cricket Club. There we go, but it's not about me. Let's get stuck into you now. I'm keen to see how you really kind of got into acting, really, and what that must have been like for you.
It was a bit of a mad one. I went for an open audition when I was 12.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I never really expected that I could make a career out of it, and ended up getting this job that Trudy Styler had paid for it, and next minute I was living in Kensington, chilling with Sting. Yeah,
really?
Kind of like ripped out of high school in like year 8.
What's Sting like?
He's actually a sound guy. He's very quiet.
Is he?
Yeah.
OK, there you go. So that must have been a big upheaval for you, though, really.
Yeah, it was mad. And then I went back to high school and no one bloody spoke to me.
Really?
Yeah.
What, because they were intimidated?
Yeah, I think they thought I was off making movies, and then the film never came out. It went straight to DVD.
No.
So they were like, you lied.
You lied to us, yeah, you've just been missing, you've been truant.
You never even made a film.
You never even made a film. But talk to me a bit about, well, I don't know, really. I mean, was Corrie one of the biggest things for you? I don't know. It's very hard to tell with actors, because you think that this is the thing they'd be most proud of, and then quite often they say, no, it's not.
Nah, Corrie blew it open for me, yeah. It was like overnight rock and roll fame, being in Manchester and playing the bad boy.
Yeah.
I didn't really like it, though.
Why not?
I don't know, it just was too much. The more people I met, the lonelier I got.
Really?
Yeah, it was too intense, man. It was like everybody watches Corrie.
Yeah.
So whether they're 6 years old or 95, you can't go anywhere.
Do you ever get confused for the character? Because I've heard a couple of people talking about, like, if their character's done something like killed someone and it gets shouted out in the show, I can't believe you've killed Sharon! It's like, I didn't actually kill Sharon.
Yeah. I used to notice people, like, wouldn't say hello to me. I'd be like, you can come and say hello. And they'd just be, like, filming me on the sly. I'd be like, I can see you.
But then it's interesting. So talk me through what happened there, really, because you were in Our Girl as well. That was an absolutely massive hit.
Yeah, that was huge. Like, the opportunity there was amazing. Like, the first season I only had one line in it. And then I managed to get to season 4 or 5, and I was, like, one of the leads against Michelle.
Brilliant.
So just keeping my head down and being on my mark.
Yeah, keeping your head down, working hard as well. Yeah. But, I mean, look, mate, you know, some of the things that have happened recently as well, you've been very outspoken about the vaccine.
I have.
Right? And that has had an impact on your career, I believe, has it?
Massively. Huge.
Well, talk to me initially. But this is, you know, this is the People's Channel, and some people watching this, of course, well, I imagine many people will be vaxxed up to the eyeballs and probably willing to queue up for another one, maybe get it in the eyeball next time. But you obviously are not one of those people. Why not?
Mainly because it being mRNA, which is experimental. We've never used it in human history, on such a large global scale especially. The efficacy, we now know, wanes, even though I'm probably not allowed to mention that, because a lot of Ofcom and all that. To me, it just seems like a huge medical scandal that we've never seen in human history. And I think it's going to go down as...
Yeah, well, I mean, it may well do. I mean, obviously, I kind of have to say, you know, now the usual stuff, which obviously, you know,
we have to have the balance.
Anyone can take this vaccine, and indeed, it can save lives. And so there we go. But on top of that, one thing I will say is I actually am in a WhatsApp group for like local residents, people in my block of flats, right? And it never ceases to amaze me. The ones who have like had 4 jabs, they keep getting COVID.
Oh yeah, it's definitely pandemic of the vaccinated.
It's staggering, and they go, gosh, you know, I'm so ill. I mean, by the way, I'm not telling anyone not to get the vaccine here. I'm not trying to say that it doesn't work at all. I mean, undoubtedly, for some people, it's massively saved their lives. I do want to make that very clear. By the way, I'm not getting shouted at. This is genuinely what I want to say. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like if someone said to me, have 4 of these jabs, but you can still get this thing and pass it on, and it'll still level you, I think logic would say to me, I'm a bit concerned about maybe how good this thing is.
Yes. I think I saw on Twitter, it was like, if you gave your dog 4 jabs for rabies and he still got rabies, would you be going to the vet to say there's a problem there?
But you've had a lot of pushback on this, haven't you? And has it affected your career, or has it been more a social media thing?
No, it affected my career. I've been plastered over the front page news for attending protests. You know, I was stood with the NHS staff and the workers, which luckily got the U-turn on that, but I've been told I'm killing Granny, I was arrested, front page news, no one will hire me, they know I won't do a PCR test, so I think insurance-wise, they don't even bother anymore. Right. And yeah, natural immunity died in 2020, so...
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because there are a lot of places now, in fact, I think many places in the world now, you don't have to prove that you've been vaccinated, and you don't have to do a PCR test or anything like that. So it does seem strange that people would not let you work because you're unvaccinated and don't want to do a PCR test.
I imagine it's to do with insurance and with it being, you know, I was running a lot, which is like behind the camera. So like up in Manchester, if there's a gig at Old Trafford, you've got to be jabbed because they won't let you go around Ronaldo, even though he's probably not jabbed himself.
Well,
we don't know, but yeah, no. But all staff, it's just the insurance. I think it's just a box that they've got to tick now.
OK, all right, but moving on and looking ahead now for the future, what you got coming up?
So I'm hitting the streets. I've kind of thought, because I've talked to people for 2 years on the internet about, and I've created this safe space on my Instagram, and I get a lot of whistleblowers from the NHS. But I just thought, you know what, I'm going to hit the streets and just start asking people questions like, do you trust the government? Do you trust the mainstream media?
Right.
Like, so I'm doing that at the minute. It's called Lazy Woke TV. And then, yeah, just generally trying to find out what people's views are, because we're just kind of forgotten about, like, we're the people that run this country, not the elites in Parliament and Westminster. Like, we're the people, the real people that run this. Do you know what I mean? So,
have you always been quite sceptical of power?
Yeah, I suppose I have, yeah. I've never been Maybe my ADHD helped and I didn't listen in school, so they didn't program
Well, it didn't
me.
sound like you're at school a lot, given the
No,
acting
yeah,
career, to
yeah,
be
yeah.
fair. Yeah, but
The programming didn't work.
all right, okay. Let's finish on a positive. What's been the best moment of your career? The best moment, or the best party, or the best whatever.
I've got to give my hats off to our girl travelling the world. We shot in Malaysia, we shot in South Africa. I've travelled the world with that show, so. And I met some amazing, men from the army and women from the army, so that helped.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, I mean, we don't seem to treat them with enough respect, do we? I did a thing before about, obviously, what's been going on with an asylum seeker hotel, and there's a guy in there who's a firefighter who was living in that hotel, needed it for his address to see his kids at the weekend.
I had a feeling he might have been a veteran.
Yeah, well, there you go. And so it's like, well, and then he gets turfed out.
Wow.
And I do find that quite shocking. But
yeah,
just lastly, in your, I don't know how much of it, kind of the acting bubble that you hang around with these days at all, but do you think there's a lot of fake wokery going on there? People just saying stuff because they think it's what other people want to hear. They actually haven't thought about it at all.
Yeah, and I feel there's a lot of propaganda. Like, the media in the UK have never been trustworthy. And I feel like there's a lot of Autobot propaganda people just regurgitating, like, as long as I can just say live on TV, never Rishi, never Rishi.
Oh, really?
Never
Why
Rishi.
not?
The guy's a World Economic Forum puppet who wants to bring in digital currencies and no.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's strong stuff. Obviously, I now have to say that Rishi Sunak is, well, as far as we're aware, not a World Economic Forum puppet, but you're entitled to your views.
I am.
Course, absolutely. Sean, thank you very, very much. I've enjoyed this, mate. Cheers. Great to have you on the show. We'll have to hang out soon, mate. All right, take care. That was Shaun Ward up there, of course, Corrie star, our girl star, and also a fierce opponent of, I suppose, authoritarianism and indeed the vaccine. What did you make of that? We'll get some of your views in a sec. Yes, there we go. It's time now for Barrage the Farage. I was hoping to call it For Christie's Sake, but there we go. Apparently I've got to stay very on brand. So anyway, Bob asks, does the fact that there are so many candidates for the job of Prime Minister mean that the Tories are strong in depth or lacking any standout successor? Really interesting question, that, Bob. I would say they're lacking any standout successor because I think they are, frankly. I think if there was someone of real gravitas and real class, then actually they would be standing head and shoulders above. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to the runners and the riders coming up. There was a Conservative home poll yesterday of Conservative Party members, so basically the people who will ultimately get the final say on who becomes our next Prime Minister. And Kemi Badenoch and Penny Mordaunt were the standout leaders there. Crucially, not Rishi Sunak. Sean will be happy. Not Rishi Sunak. So there we go. I think there's a real lack of quality. But I hate to say it, Bob. I hate to say it. I think there's a lack of quality right across the floor of both of those houses. We've got a man in Keir Starmer who's so wooden that birds try to nest in him. And then we had Boris Johnson, of course, there, who, let's be honest with you, didn't get everything right, but could win you elections. And now people as well, who I'm not convinced will be able to run a bath. Another viewer asks, they say things happen in threes. Boris has gone, so which other two leaders would you like to see the back of? Nicola Sturgeon and Nicola Sturgeon. Right, Robert asks, following the recent Beergate and Partygate issues, do you believe that police commissioners are politically biased? Yes, I do. And in fact, I tweeted something on this earlier on as well, didn't I? Which is about this Beergate investigation. Sir Beer Cormer, of course, he got let off by Durham Police. I find that miraculous. Who, of course, is the Police and Crime Commissioner up in Durham? Oh, she's only a member of the Labour Party, isn't she? But coming up next, we've got the one and only Mark Stein. Thank you very much for everyone who's been tuning in. I have loved pretending to be Nigel Farage today. I've even got a double-breasted jacket on. I'll see you again at the same time tomorrow. But right now, it's your weather.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Plenty of sunshine on offer for the next few days, and it's not going to be as hot. However, extreme heat is expected to arrive during the weekend. It's been pretty hot recently thanks to an area of high pressure, but here comes a weather front, and it's a cold front, so we'll be introducing slightly cooler air over the next few days. But it's still going to be very warm tonight, especially across the south. Maybe the odd little bit of rain here and there, but not enough to quench the gardens, I suspect. It will be turning cooler, certainly cooler than last night across northern Britain, but still in the south, a very warm and humid night with temperatures holding up in the high teens in places. But it will be noticeably cooler across parts of northeast England compared to last night. A few showers will drift in across northwest Scotland. They'll keep going during Wednesday. Likely to start fairly cloudy in the south, but that cloud breaking up. And then actually for many, it's a fine summer's day tomorrow. There will be a few more showers, perhaps just drifting into southwest Scotland, but otherwise most places dry. Temperatures pleasant low 20s for the majority, but still up to the high 20s, possibly across the southeast, 27 or 28 Celsius. A few more of those showers drifting into northern Scotland, staying fairly breezy here as well. We may just see a few showers for Northern Ireland and spreading into northwest England during the night. And Thursday will be a cloudier day across northern Britain. Still a few showers coming into western Scotland.